Have you ever stopped and wondered if banks can safely pay you 4%? How are they making 10%, 12%, sometimes even 15% on the exact same money? And more importantly, why are you getting the smallest piece of the pie? Because here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. Your high-yield savings account isn't designed to make you money. It's designed to make the bank money. And right now, there's a quiet shift happening behind the scenes. One that's pulling billions of dollars away from everyday savers and redirecting it into something called private credit markets. Unless you understand how this works, you'll keep earning safe returns while your money is being used to generate massive profits somewhere else. Let's break this down. When you deposit money into a high-yield savings account, it feels like you're doing the smart thing. You're earning interest. It's safe, liquid, and simple. But what most people don't realize is this. You're not investing your money. You're lending it to the bank. And the bank? They turn around and lend that same money again. But this time not to you, to corporations, real estate developers, private companies, and leverage buyouts. And here's where things start to get interesting. Because they're not lending at 4%. They're lending at 8%, 10%, sometimes 12% or more. So pause for a second and think about that. You give the bank your money, they pay you 4%, then they lend it out at 10%. That 6% difference isn't small, that's the spread. And that spread is where banks make billions. Now here's the part almost nobody talks about. In the past, banks were the primary middlemen for lending. But today, a massive chunk of that lending has moved outside the traditional banking system into something called private credit markets. And this is where things really shift. Private credit is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of borrowing from a bank, companies borrow directly from private investors, funds, and institutions. No middleman. No retail savings account. No traditional structure, just capital flowing directly to borrowers at premium rates. And because these loans are often less liquid, more specialized, or slightly riskier, they pay more, a lot more. We're talking 8% to 15% returns in many cases. Now think about what this means. Large institutions, pension funds, hedge funds, ultra-wealthy investors are moving their money into these private credit deals. Why? Because they understand something most retail investors don't. The real yield isn't in the savings account. It's in the lending itself. But here's where it gets frustrating. Your money, your deposits are still being used in this system just indirectly. You're still providing the capital. But instead of earning the full return, you're getting a fraction. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine two people. Person A puts $100,000 into a high-yield savings account at 4% and earns $4,000 in a year safe. Predictable. Simple. Now person B accesses private credit opportunities earning, say, 10%. Same $100,000, but now they're making $10,000. That's a $6,000 difference in just 1 year. And over 10 years, that gap doesn't just grow, it explodes. So the question becomes, why isn't everyone doing this? Why are most people still sitting in savings accounts, while institutions are quietly compounding at much higher rates? The answer comes down to 3 things: access, complexity, and perception of risk. Let's start with access. For a long time, private credit was locked behind closed doors. You needed millions of dollars, connections, and institutional access. It wasn't built for everyday investors. So naturally, most people never even knew it existed. Then comes complexity. Private credit isn't as simple as opening a savings account. There are terms like direct lending, mezzanine debt, and asset-backed financing. It sounds intimidating, and when something feels complicated, most people avoid it. And finally, risk. Because yes, private credit carries more risk than a savings account. It's not FDIC insured, it's less liquid, and it depends on the borrower actually repaying the loan. So on the surface, it feels safer to stay in cash, even if that means accepting lower returns. But here's the problem. What feels safe isn't always safe in the long run. If inflation is running at 3% and your savings account is paying 4%, you're barely breaking even in real terms. And after taxes, you might actually be losing purchasing power. Meanwhile, institutions are earning 8%, 10%, 12% compounding faster, growing wealth faster, and pulling further ahead. And this is where the real shift begins. Because over the last few years, something has started to change. Private credit is slowly becoming more accessible. Not fully, not equally, but the doors are starting to open. So now that you understand where the real yield is being generated, let's talk about the part that actually matters. How private credit really works and how close you can realistically get to those returns. At its core, private credit is simple. A company needs money, and instead of going to a bank, it goes directly to investors. Those investors provide capital, and in return, they receive interest payments, often much higher than traditional loans. But here's where it becomes more structured. These aren't random loans. They're typically packaged, managed, and monitored by private credit funds. You can think of these funds as specialized lenders that analyze borrowers, structure deals, set interest rates, manage risk, and collect payments all on behalf of investors. So instead of you personally lending to a company, you're usually participating through a system that handles the complexity for you. Now, why would a company choose this instead of a bank? The answer is simple. Speed and flexibility. Banks are heavily regulated, they move slowly, and they have strict lending requirements. Private credit, on the other hand, offers faster approvals, custom deal structures, and far less red tape. Because of that convenience, companies are willing to pay a premium, and that premium is exactly where your potential return comes from. To make this easier to understand, it helps to break private credit into a few main categories. First, there's direct lending, which is the most common. This is where investors lend directly to mid-sized companies with predictable cash flow and structured repayments. It carries moderate risk and is typically where that 8 to 12% yield range lives. Then there's mezzanine debt, which sits between debt and equity. It comes with higher risk but also higher potential returns, often in the 10 to 15% range or more along, with increased volatility. Finally, there's asset-backed lending, where loans are secured by real assets like real estate, equipment, or receivables. These tend to be lower risk than unsecured loans, but still offer higher yields than traditional savings accounts. The key insight here is that private credit isn't just one thing, it's a spectrum. Different levels of risk, different return profiles, and different ways to access it. Which brings us to the real question. How does someone like you actually participate? Because realistically, you're probably not wiring millions of dollars into a private lending deal anytime soon. The most accessible entry point for most people is through publicly traded vehicles like business development companies, or BDCs. These are companies listed on the stock market that invest in private credit. What makes them interesting is that they're required to distribute most of their income to investors, which often results in high dividend yields, frequently in the 8%, 9%, or even 10% plus range. When you compare that to a typical 4% savings account, the difference is significant. But it's important to remember that higher returns always come with trade-offs. BDCs are exposed to market fluctuations, sensitive to economic downturns, and dependent on borrower performance. They provide access, but they are not risk-free. Beyond that, there are private credit funds, which are closer to the actual source of these returns. However, they usually come with higher minimum investments, possible accreditation requirements, and longer lock-up periods. This is where institutional investors typically operate, trading liquidity for potentially more stable returns. Then there's a growing middle ground, alternative investment platforms. These platforms are starting to bridge the gap by allowing individuals to invest in private loans, real estate debt, and structured credit deals, often with lower minimums and greater transparency. They're not perfect, but they represent an important shift. The barrier between institutional and everyday investors is slowly starting to break down. This is where strategy becomes critical. This isn't about taking all your savings and throwing it into private credit. That would be reckless. Instead, it's about allocation. Think of your money in layers. The first layer is your emergency fund, liquid, safe, and accessible, which belongs in a savings account. No debate. The second layer is intermediate capital money you don't need immediately, but still want relatively stable, which is where some exposure to higher yield opportunities might make sense. The third layer is long-term growth capital, where you can accept less liquidity, more complexity, and higher return potential. Private credit typically sits somewhere between that second and third layer. The mindset shift most people never make is this. They think in terms of safe versus risky, while smart investors think in terms of balancing capital across different risk-return profiles. Because the truth is, keeping everything in safe assets can quietly become the riskiest strategy of all, not because you'll lose money overnight, but because you'll lose time. And time is what determines whether compounding works for you or against you. To put this into perspective, if you leave $100,000 in a 4% account, after 10 years you'll have roughly $148,000. That sounds good. But at 10%, that same $100,000 grows to over $259,000. That's a difference of more than $100,000, not from working harder or earning more, but simply from allocating differently. Of course, this doesn't mean you blindly chase higher returns. Private credit comes with real risks. Borrowers can default, liquidity can be limited, economic downturns can impact performance, and not all platforms are created equal. This is a space that rewards informed decisions and punishes careless yield chasing. So the real goal isn't just to earn more, it's to understand where returns come from, who is capturing them, and how much of that you can realistically access. Because once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. Your savings account stops looking like a wealth-building tool and starts looking like what it really is: a parking spot for your money. And there's nothing wrong with parking your money, but you don't build wealth in the parking lot. You build it where capital is actually working. So here's your challenge. Before you move a single dollar, start paying attention to where yield is actually being generated. Not advertised, not simplified, but generated. Because the moment you understand that, you stop playing the game at the surface level and start thinking like the people who control the system. And if you want more breakdowns like this, where we expose how money really moves, how institutions actually invest, and how you can position yourself smarter, make sure you subscribe. Because on this channel, we're not just talking about making money. We're talking about keeping it, growing it, and understanding the systems behind it. And if this changed how you see your savings, drop a comment below. I'm done earning crumbs. Because the difference between average returns and real wealth often comes down to one decision: where you choose to put your money. I'll see you in the next video.